President Putin is again trying to terrorize the Ukrainian people to use winter as a weapon to freeze Ukraine into submission. Once again, he must fail, and Europe will continue to empower Ukraine's resistance. We are repairing, for example, the damage done by Russian strikes. We are stabilizing Ukraine's energy grid with over 2 gigawatts of electricity exports from the Union to Ukraine, and we are protecting critical infrastructure, for example, with new anti-drone equipment. So this winter will shape the future of the war, and our response must rise to the challenge. And this is why we will disburse today almost 6 billion euros from the ERA loan and the Ukraine facility to Ukraine. And this is why I very much welcome the European Council's very clear commitment in the last meeting to cover Ukraine's financial needs for the next 2 years, 2026, 2027. It's clear we will deliver and we will cover the financial needs of Ukraine for the next 2 years. The discussion is now on the how. And there are 3 options. Option 1 is to use the budget's headroom to raise money on the capital markets. Option 2 is to have an intergovernmental agreement that member states raise the necessary capital by themselves. And option 3 is to have a reparations loan. This is based on immobilized Russian asset. So this would mean take the cash balances from the immobilized Russian assets, hand them as a loan to Ukraine, and Ukraine has to pay back this loan if Russia pays back reparations. This is the most effective way to sustain Ukraine's defense and its economy, and it's the clearest way to make Russia understand that time is not on their side.
With regards to the Russian frozen assets, we understand the sensitivity, but we count on the member states to find solutions swiftly on those assets and to make sure that we can use them for Ukraine's reconstruction. A clear signal must be sent. Those who destroy must pay for the damage they caused. And very much connected to this on defence, the urgency could not be greater. In recent weeks we have seen drones, unidentified balloons violating EU member states' airspaces. A deliberate testing of Europe's resolve. These are not isolated incidents, but these are warnings, and these are warnings that we should take very seriously.
But this strength is not built with superstructures. By the way, I read that it intends to create a European espionage service. I would say it is disturbing. I would say we can do without it.
We all know how it got stuck with Belgium on the Russian frozen assets. I think the simple question is, you said there are 3 options at the table. One was headspace in the current budget. How much is left, I would say. That doesn't sound like a lot of money. The second option I don't think is very serious either. So how are you going to break the Belgian blockage that we saw happening in October so that there will be a deal in December?
She insisted on the failed war policy, while there are no necessary financial resources to further fund Ukraine and the war. Securing the money, on the one hand, contradicts the fundamental principles of the law. Casts doubt on it. On the other hand, it would indebt generations. It is clear that the price of the misguided Brussels decisions will be paid by the European people. Meanwhile, the Commission would withdraw further powers from the member states, for example, under the pretext of enforced defense preparedness. Meanwhile, they continue to push the flawed migration pact. The October EIT only further compounded all these problems. Therefore, it can be considered a failure. It's time for a change in direction.
Thank you, Madam President. President von der Leyen. It's tremendous. This lady can't even endure a whole debate in this chamber. They didn't talk about housing. It's the main security issue for people, but they didn't discuss it. Imagine if you had to pay more than half of your salary just to pay rent, to have a place to live, that you have to reduce heating hours, that you don't have enough to buy groceries, that you can't afford extracurricular activities for your children because you need to pay the rent. The speculators in Europe are stealing the salary of the people with abusive rents, and in this way they buy houses without even seeing them in a matter of minutes. They ask for the price and the money they can make by renting or selling them later, and they buy. And they also invest in large energy companies, in media, in weapons, and that's why they're allowing this great theft from families, Madam President, because their businesses and Trump's weapons are not being paid for with their effort or work. They are being paid for by stealing the wages of the people who actually work.
You have forbidden us to freely buy gas, forbidden us to freely buy oil, and now you are forcing us to obligatorily buy Ukrainian grain, which we do not want in Slovakia. Please, what kind of methods are these? When has anyone from Slovakia here in Brussels forced you to buy something, or when have we forbidden you from doing something? That simply did not happen. Please put an end to these orders and bans and focus instead on restoring true freedom and on kickstarting economic growth, because things in Europe are really going downhill. Practically everything in Europe is the most expensive in the world. And in the West, factories are no longer being built, but only they are closing. And this is the result of the pseudo-green policy that Brussels is pursuing.
This week, however, media are full of a multi-billion corruption case in Ukraine targeting the inner circle of the same President Zelensky. Is this something we really want in the EU? Thanks to the invitation by the Patriots, we had Professor John Mertzheimer in the Parliament. He painted a bleak picture concerning Ukraine. The war is a result of an unwise attempt to enlarge NATO. The United States will pivot to Asia. The war will end in an ugly victory of Russia, resulting also in weakening the NATO and the EU, but Russia will not attack EU, not even go beyond the Russian-speaking regions of Ukraine. So told Professor Meitensheimer. He doesn't tell nice tales but tends to be right. Let us adapt to the realities. Let's disentangle from the quagmire of unending war in Ukraine.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for once again debating Ukraine and your favorite politician Zelensky today. Just the events of yesterday. A gilded toilet and shrink-wrapped bundles of millions of US dollars. We have the resignations of the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Justice. We have investigations in the immediate circle of Mr. Zelensky. We have $400 million worth of energy deals and 10 to 15% kickbacks that are at stake. The European Union has meanwhile pumped around $200 billion into Kyiv, and according to the forecast of the renowned institute, another $400 billion will be needed in the coming years to keep Ukraine running. While here people have less and less money at their disposal, while inflation is skyrocketing here. I can only say, enough of this. Enough with the energy deals of Ukrainian oligarchs. Let's ensure that the money stays here in the country.